And so I think this idea of like, oh, I don't want to be bothered with the whole money thing. I'm too busy with the creative aspect. I think is an excuse, and in reality, is a lot of developers struggle certainly early on in their project and really knowing what they're building. And if you as the creator, as the team, can't really understand what you're doing yet, then it becomes a real challenge when you have to go out and explain to others what it is that you're doing. And so really, pitching is about clearly articulating what you are doing so others can understand as well, right? I mean, it's this kind of magic about being able to articulate that in a succinct way so that someone's like, oh, I get it. Okay, now I understand, as opposed to spending 3 hours talking about, min-maxing DPSs and I don't know, whatever combo mechanics and stuff. And people kind of just, lose sight of what's going on. And importantly, pitching is not just about business. I mean, it's often about business, but not only about business, even though we so often frame it as this, business thing. Oh, if you need money, well, you better get out there and pitch. But reality is you need to be pitching all the time. And ultimately, pitching is about winning support for your vision. So winning support is a very broad concept. So sure, you got to pitch to publishers, right? You're trying to win funding, win their support for what you're doing. And investors, which is often what we talk about when we talk about pitching to publishers, pitching to investors. But you also need to be pitching to partners, right? I mean, depending on what kind of game you're working on, maybe you have to get some extra support from, I don't know, Unreal. So you have to pitch to them on why you need better support or help on something. Maybe you're working with some special tools and need some advice. You need special access to, some next gen hardware. All of these companies, the platforms, the stores, the middlewares, the tool providers, Twitch, Kickstarter, all these other entities out there in the universe are all potential partners. And if you need help and support from them, you have to pitch them, even though they're not writing you a check. Just by helping you, it's a form of supporting what you're doing. Similarly, pitching to your peers, right? Showing the game to other developers, to your peers, other studios, to get input, feedback, help, whatever. You're winning them over to that vision. One of the great things in Montreal is it is a very tight community, and all developers help each other out, even if it's just feedback on their project. And that's it's a great resource. Pitching to the press, right? Press or influencers, the media. You are literally pitching to them to get their attention, to get coverage for the game, for them to play your game, to stream your game. That also is a form of a pitch, in that you have to win them over to your vision. And ultimately, you have to pitch to gamers, right? They're the ultimate sort of receptors of your pitch. And you have to convince them why this game is for them and why they're going to love it and why they should play for it and play it and spend their time in it and tell all their friends about it. And so that is another form of a pitch. Ultimately, it really is this sort of sense that you are pitching an opportunity to have fun, an opportunity to invest, an opportunity to get involved in a great, innovative, beautiful project, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the challenges, it does require a certain amount of empathy as you prepare your pitch in understanding who are you pitching to, because opportunity can mean many different things depending who the audience is. And this is important because the point of pitching is not to prove that you're the most awesome game in the universe. Rather, the point is to show them why your game is the right opportunity for them, right? So if you're pitching to gamers, the them is gamers. If you're pitching to investors, the them is investors. If you're pitching to, Steam or Unreal or Twitch or the press, like the them are those things. And so whenever you're thinking about pitching or building a pitch, you have to think about who is them. What is their business model? What do they care about? What are they looking for? And how does my game, my project, my studio, the thing that I'm pitching, how is that an opportunity to them? And many developers don't do that, right? Many developers are so focused on expressing why their game is so cool and so amazing and so awesome that there's sort of like a disconnect there. So empathy is super important. So let's do a few quick examples, right? So if you're going to go pitch to a mobile game publisher, well, what does an opportunity look like to them? Well, they want to see strong KPIs, right? What does your day one retention look like? What does lifetime value look like, et cetera? They want to see that user acquisition and all your business intelligence and live ops can scale. So if the game does well, there's opportunity to scale. And they want to understand what the long-term viability of the game is. What does the meta look like? What's the progression system? Will this game turn into $1 billion game? Will this game feed hundreds of millions of players? So if you're pitching a game to them, those are the things that they care about, just as a quick example. If I'm pitching to more of a kind of like an impact pitch, like the game I'm doing is maybe a learning game or a game for science or something kind of quote unquote more serious. Well, what are they looking at? Well, they want to see that this game has meaningful impact on learning, health, or whatever it is that I'm doing, and that impact is scientifically sound and measurable, and that the economics are sustainable long term. Now, the partners here are going to be, granting agencies and foundations and medical institutes or universities or museums, right? These are not publishers, right? Because a publisher doesn't care about these things. So that's the kind of stuff that you're thinking about. If I'm going to go pitch to some seed venture capitalists, well, what are they looking at? What's an opportunity to them? They want to see the grit and perseverance and kind of the ambition of the founders. They want some sense of vision. What's special about this product? What kind of market insights do you have? Is there an aha moment where they believe you're onto something that no one else has thought of? And does your studio have the potential to grow exponentially? So seed VC, that's the kind of opportunities they're looking at. Premium publisher pitch, probably the style of pitch that most of you are wrestling with and chasing at the moment. So if I'm going off to pitch premium publishers, well, what do they want to see? They want to see an awesome game prototype or a demo. Kind of this is something that came up from the first showcase that Oliver hinted to, that all of the work we did, it always kind of got to the point where the publisher said, "Hey, great pitch, send me the demo." And if that demo wasn't ready, or if that demo wasn't awesome, then everything kind of stopped at that point. So that's why the second round we're putting a little more emphasis on having a great demo. They want to see that the game has sales potential. So even though it may be beautiful or maybe have some fun twist, if it's in a genre or a category that's too competitive or doesn't have sales potential, or they're going to look at that. And same thing with discoverability, right? Do they think that they can market your game? Do they think your game will get noticed above all others? And how will it get noticed? So publishers are already starting to think about that the moment the pitch starts. And then ultimately on the more pragmatic side, they want to know, can you deliver, right? Can this team execute roughly on time, roughly on budget? If they're going to jump into bed with you, they want to know that you're able to deliver. And so what we're going to do now is go into more depth on this premium publisher pitch. I think most of the projects, most of the teams that I've seen in Switzerland are primarily working on premium games for for PC and console, which would normally mean you are pitching to publishers. So some of you are on there, like I think Attila, who's mainly doing a scalable multiplayer free-to-play style game. Then this pitch recipe is less applicable to you, but there's still some good stuff in there. All right, so this is my recipe for a premium publisher, what I call a performance pitch. I've talked about this. I've shown this recipe before. So this, some of you may have seen this, out in the wild or online already, but we'll go through it. And what I mean by performance pitch is that you are delivering this pitch personally. You are performing it. So whether you are in a face-to-face meeting or a Zoom meeting, you are there to perform the pitch, and the pitch deck, the slides is kind of visual support material. Or for example, you're on stage at GDC and you've been given 5 minutes to pitch or you're applying to the showcase and you have 3 minutes to do a video pitch, so you are performing the pitch. The difference there is, a pitch that you're emailing to someone, well, obviously you're not there to narrate it and perform it. And so an emailed pitch would have to be a bit longer with more text because, again, you're not there talking. So this is the recipe. What we're going to do is we're going to go slide by slide and talk about it and see what those slides look like and sort of the goal behind each slide. The goal is to be able to deliver that in 5 minutes. So pitches to me are kind of a quick hit, and then we'll talk about time management later on. But all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a game called Bloodroots. This game is, I think, currently available on the Epic Store. It got a pretty good rating of an 81 Metacritic. It's developed by a studio called Paper Cult, which is a Montreal-based studio, and I gave them some advice on their pitch. So it pretty closely follows the recipe. There's a few little differences that we'll look at, but this was a pitch that they actually used to chase publishers and store deals, etc. I think about 2 years ago. And they've given me permission to show it. All right, so slide number 1, awesome cover art and the game and studio logos. The goal here really is to catch attention from the start and to kind of already be setting the vibe of the game and sort of setting expectations. And so this is the cover slide of the Bloodroots pitch, which I think does the job really well. Right, so this really kind of epic piece of concept art. You've got the Bloodroots logo on the top corner, and then you have the Paper Cult Studio logo down smaller in the bottom corner. And so already, when you see this, it's kind of captivating. It gets you excited. You're wondering what's going on and why there's so much blood and what's this fight about. And it does a great job as a cover slide. All right, the second slide is a gameplay overview or game overview. And here you are trying to articulate the core essence of the game, but doing it succinctly. So this is not the place where you want to waste time, 20 minutes talking about combo mechanics or the backstory of all of your NPCs or, reading passages from your lore library or, just tell me, what is this game? Like, what's the gameplay? What kind of game is it? I mean, if it's a very narrative-oriented game, okay, then maybe you tell a bit about the world setting and what the story is about. If it's more of a systems-based game, well, maybe you show a diagram of how the mechanics work and sort of what the game is and so on. But on this slide, you should really express, okay, here's the game I'm building. It's a roguelike with this feature and that, and this is what happens, and you're trying to save the world and whatever. In the case of Bloodroots, they did this kind of mood board, which I mean maybe works for them. I wouldn't have done it this way, but that's how they did it, where they said, oh, it's like you're Jackie Chan and you're improvising this fight choreography and it's all bloody and gory like Hotline Miami and Kill Bill, and it's sort of in this revenant time frame on the frontier in America. So they kind of used that to kind of set the scene of what the game was about. But I think it kind of worked for them because the next slide is the video, but I would tend to do something a little more concrete in terms of like, this is what the actual gameplay is. But they use the mood board, and I think for them it worked fine. All right, slide 3, the video clip. So now you got to show off how cool the game is, and then it's mostly for real. Now, if the game is far enough along, okay, fine, you can use a teaser video or teaser trailer. I mean, hopefully you can at least show raw gameplay footage, right? So if you're kind of earlier in development, you show some actual gameplay footage. If you're super early, you can probably get away with some kind of mock gameplay or sort of, where you're really controlling the animations and stuff, and it's not actual full-blown gameplay. But I mean, second to an actual demo, publishers absolutely love and must see video. If you send them a bundle of screenshots and a video and decks and PDF, everyone will always click on the video first, like 99% of the time, video first, always. So you do really need to think about having a video nugget to kind of showcase what the game is about. And so if you're putting this pitch deck together and you're up on stage or you're in a meeting, you want to show kind of a 20-30 seconds clip of some gameplay. And then just sort of a COVID tip: if you're doing your meetings primarily over Zoom or some other virtual system, you may want to send that video ahead of time or have a link handy and sort of drop it in the chat, so you're not getting this kind of stuttering, slow playback through Zoom, that you can say like, oh, hey, you know, here's a link, I'll pause, just hit play on your side, so they can kind of just see it real time. Or sometimes you can kind of use a sequence of screenshots depending what the game is, but that's definitely a kind of plan B. But just be mindful that whatever system you're using may not be ideal for streaming video, and sort of think of that ahead of time. All right, and I won't show you the video clip of Bloodroots, but it was an awesome video. You can look it up on Google, just say Bloodroots trailer. And that really kind of set the mood of this kind of Jackie Chan choreography and grabbing all kinds of weapons and killing everyone. And it was a great little teaser. All right, slide 4, unique selling points or USPs. Here, the goal is really to prove that you have something interesting, something unique, something innovative and compelling. At this point, the publisher should already be thinking about how I'm going to market this game. And here it's really critical, because stuff like fun to play, indie style, you know, great story, you know, lovable character, like these are not unique selling points. I mean, those are, you know, good things to have, or descriptors of what you're doing, but indie style is certainly not unique, or, you know, in-depth story world, you know, these kinds of things are just not unique at all. So they really do have to be unique. And if you don't have anything unique about your game, well, then that's, you know, maybe you need to pause and rethink things. But so this is what they did for their USPs, where they talked about the unique runs and how each run through, all the elements are different. The weapons available are different. You have the sort of choreography that you kind of do each time you play. There was the show-off mode. There was a streaming mode with integration through Twitch. I mean, replayability is not a unique selling point, but what's not conveyed in the slide visually is that there was something like it did an auto-generated seed for the procedural generation, that you could then share that seed or challenge with the seed, and that made the level replay. So the way they explained it with this kind of seed and sharing thing, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a unique way to do replayability. So when they were presenting it, it came across as more unique. This is also a good slide just to highlight how visual the slides are, right? Like remember, this is a slide deck that you are using as you are talking, either on stage or in Zoom. And so you want to primarily be very visual, you know, symbols and logos, keywords. You don't want sort of a wall of text, because people will be challenged to listen to you, and their brain is going to want to read the slides as you're talking, and it's very distracting. Now, that would be totally different for the version of the deck that you would save as a PDF to send out on email, because now if I just look at this, I don't fully understand what each things are, because you're not there saying the words. And so you would have a version where there is a lot more text to sort of describe each of these features. But for the performance deck, for the meeting deck, you want to be super visual, almost, you know, no text. All right, slide 5, traction. So here's where you prove that others think what you are doing is cool and worthy. If you're super early, then fine, you may not have any traction, and so you may want to skip the slide. But if you have stuff like some social media numbers, views on your trailer, you know, community members in your Discord, you know, if you've done any festivals or won any showcases or been selected. So for example, being selected to be in the Swiss showcase, that's a form of traction, right? That a set of jury members selected you amongst a whole bunch of projects to to be part of the showcase. So that's kind of like someone else saying that you're cool or worthy. If you've had any press coverage or any sort of deals, relationships, partners, advisors that are noteworthy, these are all signals to publishers that, oh, well, hey, if Unity selected you to be part of their keynote, well, geez, that you must be up to something special. And so it kind of signals to them that, okay, there's something good going on here. I need to pay closer attention. Anyway, so that's the traction slide. In the case of Bloodroots, when they did this slide or did this deck, it was before their announcement. So they didn't have any trailer views or any social media stuff, but they were part of I think they got second prize at a Ubisoft kind of indie pitch competition that's done up here in Montreal. They were selected for CMF, which is kind of our version of Pro Helvetia. And so they got some funding via CMF, which is a very competitive program. They were selected to be in the Indie Mega booth, which is also pretty competitive. And then they were, part of an Execution Labs mentorship program. So, for a very early stage game, winning pitch prizes and funding and being selected for the Mega booth, okay, that's already showing that they're up to something good, and other people believe what they're doing is worthy or interesting. All right, slide number 6. This is the one so many developers forget: business model and competitive analysis. So the key here is to demonstrate that there's actual market for your game, that there is sales potential, that this game could make money or should make money. On this slide, you would include stuff like what your pricing is, right? So $20 or whatever. And it's not to say that that will be the ultimate price, because the publisher may have some feedback, or it'll be a discussion. What platforms you're on, what genre tags you anticipate using, and my advice here is to skip sales forecasts. Sales forecasts are normally, you're just pulling those numbers from your butt. They're just kind of made up. Rather, I prefer to show comparables. Right, so you would go on to Steam Spy and look up games that are similar to yours that have been released in the past 12 months. So don't show Limbo from 10 years ago. Don't show Braid. Don't show Super Meat Boy. These games were released in a different era, a different context, a different market. So you have to use games in comparisons or competitors that are sort of within the past year. And one of the ways you can do this is you can go on Steam. And like go to one of the games is sort of a competitor or similar to yours, and then if you scroll down a bit, there's always a more games like this section that the Steam algorithm kind of feeds, and so you can click on each of those games and sort of see, well, how are they doing, how many users do they have, how many reviews, look them up on Steam Spy to see the estimates, and then on each of those games you can once again say, well, more games like this, and you can kind of just keep digging down the rabbit hole until you start hitting games that are really sort of not relevant to your game. But that will help you sort of flesh out the universe of competitors more thoroughly than just like, oh yeah, it's Limbo and Brave, that's my competitors. Like, no, they're not. And so what you're trying to do is kind of give a sense of what the landscape looks like. And so oftentimes I'll beat up on like couch co-op games, because if you do that kind of analysis with couch co-op games, the average sales are quite low, 1,000 copies, 5,000 copies. And so that's very hard if you're trying to pitch a publisher to get excited about your project, but on average couch co-op games sell 1,000 copies. Well, that's just not going to kind of get them excited. Whereas if you're doing, I don't know, an RPG or survival game, there's 100 survival games that have all sold, 1 million units or more. I'm just making it up. So now that landscape, while maybe a bit more competitive, there's opportunity there. And now it's a question of, do we believe that your game is as good as the ones that are succeeding, or are you kind of crappy like the ones that are failing? So there's a more interesting conversation to have when you do that kind of landscape analysis. And where do you fall in comparison, as opposed to, yeah, if I sell 100,000 units, we break even, and like it doesn't mean anything. All right, but you can do a whole other lecture just on competitive analysis. So this was for Bloodroots. Hotline Miami being an obvious one, Helldivers and a few others. And so, that's a nice range. That's a healthy range that if we do well and the game performs and we do some good marketing, we can sell hundreds of thousands of copies, as several other games have done. So that's exciting. On this slide, they didn't put the other business stuff, the pricing and things like that, because they put it on a later slide. So that's one little tweak that they did. So they just focused this on the competition. All right, slide 7, production timeline. You have to help the publisher understand the state of the game and how much work is left until launch. I normally recommend this kind of ribbon or sausage type pipeline, where you kind of break it up and say, well, this was the start of the project. Here's where we had our beta. We're in prototype, or we're in pre-production right now. Alpha is this date, beta is this date, launch is this date. We're going to go to PAX here and Gamescom here, and this kind of stuff. So you kind of lay it out on a timeline. And so you want to include key production milestones. When you're revealing, releasing, etc. And if there's any sort of big marketing beats. I mean, in the old world, we would put events like PAX and Gamescoms and stuff. I mean, now it might be more like which online showcases are you part of, that kind of stuff. Importantly, the last bullet here is sort of a question that often comes up, and the timeline should be written as if you have the budget, right? So if you need $500,000, and with $500,000, you can hire the 2 programmers and an extra artist, and you'll be done in 1 year, then that's the plan and timeline you show. It's the 1 year, $500,000 timeline. If the current timeline is, well, if I don't get the $500,000, it's going to take me 5 years because it's just me and my friend working on it on part-time, that's irrelevant. You don't need to show that 5-year me and my buddy version of the timeline, because that is not what the publisher is buying into, right? They're like, okay, I'm going to give you $500,000. Like what does the timeline look like with that money in your bank? So prepare the budget, prepare the timeline, the schedule, as if you already have the money and you're working with the publisher. All right, so this is their timeline, and as noted before, they included some of the previous sort of business model stuff that I would have put on the other slide, but they included on this slide, which it's fine. So they also put in this stuff like length of play, like how long the story mode is, and so on, because sometimes that comes up too, right? And one of my recommendations was, list the time for the story mode, but then make sure you have these other 2 modes that are essentially infinite, right? Because they did have this kind of challenge replayability, which you can kind of just keep doing infinitely and getting up the leaderboards and whatnot. Because oftentimes if a publisher asks you how long is your game, and you're like, oh, well, the story's 10 hours, that's kind of a turnoff, because they want something that can kind of live longer. So I felt it was important to include, okay, story is 10 hours, but these other modes are infinite. And here they have their platforms, they have their price point, and here they actually, in fact, included the budget numbers, which I would have done on a later slide, but it's fine. And at the bottom is this kind of ribbon / sausage type of timeline where they show when the production started, where they are. Yeah, so March 2018, so they were headed to GDC, when they were revealing and launching at the PAXs, and they even put their DLC date. On this slide, you may also put, like, if you're using any specific tools or technology. So if you're using Unreal, put the Unreal logo. If you're using Spatial OS, put the Spatial OS logo, anything like that, to kind of give a sense of what the production looks like, and anything noteworthy there. All right, slide 8 is the team. And not just the team, but the team, any pedigree, awards, past successes, that kind of stuff. And here's where you're really trying to convince the publisher that you're the team that can pull it off, that you can build this, that you can execute and deliver what you promise. And here too, you can include any partners, right? So if you have a notable writer you're working with, or a sound studio that's helping out, you can put their logos or names on the slide here. And this is also where you would put, past production. So if if some of you worked at EA or Ubisoft or whatever, you put their logos there. If you worked on Call of Duty or you worked on Limbo or something, well, you would put those there as sort of notable past efforts. So here's the team slide for Paper Cult. They were a small team, only 6 people. And importantly here, you'll see that it's literally just their name and their role, right? Sometimes I see pitch decks where it's like, there's a whole paragraph on the backstory and where they went to school and where they grew up and their dog's name and all. Like, at this point, I don't need to know all that. I need to know that you've got, a couple programmers, a couple artists, this is the team working on the game. Here they have Vibe Avenue, which is an audio production firm in Canada, and Evolve, which is a well-known PR firm. So they've partnered with them. So they've included them on the team. And then the other block is where they worked before. So Ubisoft and a few other Canadian-based companies, to show that these aren't just a bunch of punks out of school, that they're, they've worked at other studios and they know what they're doing. All right, slide 9, the one that is almost always missing from a developer pitch, is you actually need to ask what you want. You have to put it in there. You have to put the actual dollar amount. We want $500,000, we want $1 million, we want 250, whatever the number is. You have to actually put that number in there. In addition to the money, you also need to put other things you expect out of the relationship, like role and functional needs. So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Publisher, we'd like help with the PR, with the trailer, localization, porting, et cetera. Whatever that list is, it has to be there. So that the publisher, when they're looking at this, they know what you're expecting from them. If the publisher has specific genre expertise, you'd want to highlight that. An example I'd like to use is Paradox, right? Paradox are known as being the strategy kings. So if you're making a strategy game and you're pitching to Paradox, you'd probably want to highlight, hey, Paradox, we'd really like your input on the design because you are gurus of strategy games. And then stuff like any specific geography or platform needs. So for example, if you think your game could perform well in China, does the publisher have the ability to get into China? And if they can, great. If they can't, well, then that, is part of your decision process, or then you have to negotiate so that China is not included in the publisher's regions, and you'll go off and sort of do China separately, just as an example. Or if you are working mainly on PC, Xbox, but you'd really like to go to Switch and you've never done Switch and you don't have Switch kits and you're not registered with Nintendo, well, if you're talking with Curve or Team 17, well, they are gurus of Switch ports, right? They've done a bunch of them. They've had great success on Switch. And so that could be part of what you are looking for from them. And you want to highlight that too. So publishers, they understand that they're the ones with money, and that in most cases, the developers are the poor homeless folks that need the money. But it's never good to only see the publisher as a check. It's sort of like disrespectful to them. It's insulting because they do provide other expertise, other services, other support. And so being kind of clear on what your expectations are is very critical. And also having the precise funding amount on the slide also is a kind of subtle way to show that you know what you're doing. You have a schedule, you have a budget, you know what it's going to cost you. Right? Because remember, one of the things they're trying to assess is whether or not you can deliver on time, on budget. And if you're not even able to articulate like what the budget looks like, well, that's a major red flag. As a kind of a Jedi mind trick, I always encourage that the funding ask is not a perfectly round number. Right? If I see 250, 500, 1 million, then to me, that seems like you just sort of copy pasted a number onto the page that's, we need $1 million. That sounds good. Just $1 million. Whereas if it's, $972,348, it's like, oh, well, that seems like a really precise number. They must have been calculating all the little, every little detail. And so there's this, just this weird sort of mental hack that if that number is sort of more not so round. It just seems like a more a real number than if I just put 250. Anyways, and even if the number is 250, still, make it 251, 700 or something, like just to, get that Jedi mind trick going. All right, so that's the ask slide, super critical. And this was their ask slide, which they kind of didn't listen to my advice by putting the number, because they said, oh, well, we had the budget on the other slide, and so we'll bring it up there. So they kind of hid it in that sense. I thought they should have put it directly on the side. They chose not to, but they put other stuff like marketing, porting, and well, they put the word funding, but they really should have put the dollar amount. All right, and then the final slide is the contact info and more awesome art, and just to kind of leave on a strong final impression. And in their case, this was actually an animated slide, so it was kind of much cooler than it looks here. But and he put his phone number, which I do not recommend putting your phone number. No publisher is going to call you. Sort of, like don't worry about it. They did miss the opportunity to include their like Twitter and other kind of social media links, which I would recommend. What's handy is if you're doing an on-stage performance or pitch, then normally it's the last slide that's kind of like left up on screen as the jury or the judges are giving you feedback and you're answering questions and stuff. So that way, if people are in the audience, like that was super cool, they can kind of like on their phones, like punch in your Twitter and follow you and that kind of stuff. And so it's really wise to have those social media links and handles kind of up on that final slide. All right, so that was the publisher premium publisher performance pitch recipe, and I show you the outline here again. I wouldn't say that the order is mandatory. I mean, it's not like there's some template jury or federation that's going to come and make sure your slides are in the right order or whatever. It's more that these are all the most critical elements that a publisher needs to kind of assess the project and get a sense of what's going on. All right, so now that the recipe, we kind of walked through it, I'm going to go through a few more kind of meta elements in terms of preparation, managing meeting time, that kind of stuff. And this part I think should go a bit quicker, and then we'll open it up for any questions. All right, so mindset. I think just as you go into pitching, it can be fairly exhausting over time. But remember, you have to be pitching an opportunity and not problems, right? Publishers don't want to hear that you're desperate for money. They want to hear that you're working on an amazing game that could be a huge success. Realize that pitching is a critical survival skill. There should be no shame in pitching. Pitching is, as we said before, just winning people to your vision and getting support. You're not a greasy car salesman or saleswoman because you're out there sort of pitching what you're working on. You need to think beyond publishers. So even though the bulk of this presentation has been how to do a publisher pitch, you do need to always be thinking about how I'm pitching, how I'm articulating my game to gamers, to press, to partners, to peers, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, pitching is about getting people behind your vision. And in that sense, it's really about long-term relationship building. I think you're going to have a very stressful time if every pitch you construct in your head is like a win-lose scenario. Every pitch you do is a chance to make connections, to build relationships, to get people to understand who you are, what your studio is about, the kinds of projects you're working on. And it's still a relatively small industry that even if today's pitch was a no, that person may move somewhere else. You may work on a new project. Like things are always in a constant state of flux, that you really should be thinking about relationship building and not this kind of win-lose. So that's just mindset stuff I thought I'd throw out there because it is exhausting at times. So prep and homework, super critical. Build a target list. Do research on past deals. Look once again through genre tags on Steam. Who is publishing the games that you think are your competitors or that are similar or deal with similar thematics or styles? Build a spreadsheet and keep track of them, or even better, use a CRM, a customer relationship management software, to sort of track who your targets are, track the interactions, track the results of your calls, when you need to follow up, all that kind of stuff. it makes such a huge difference to do that homework and know, okay, I've got a racing game, so I'm not going to bother pitching Devolver, because Devolver doesn't do racing games. So Devolver is not on my list, just as an example. So don't waste your time pitching everybody. Figure out who you need to focus on. You can also ask via your network or connections. Like Swiss, Swiss community is fairly open and sharing, and just talk with your peers and say, hey, who are good publishers out there? Who do you think could be a good publisher to work with? And then prepare your materials, which we're going to go over in a moment, and then a lot of practice. Right? I think too many developers, in the past, they would be, whipping up their slide deck on the airplane ride over to San Francisco and have had no chance to practice. And then they get in front of a meeting, they're stressed and worried, and, potentially they had one too many beers the night before and they're fumbling, and it's, doesn't go well. So practice. All right, the intro cycle. I tend to prefer a very terse or very short introduction. Ideally, this is done by a mutual or trusted connection, right? So if you know someone who was published from Devolver, you ask that friend of yours to make an intro to their rep at Devolver. It always goes better if you have a connection or a friend to open that door. But you could also do, a cold call over LinkedIn, or using an event matchmaking system like we all use at GDC and Gamescom, and even Ludicious and Nordic, right? They all use the Meet to Match and these other matchmaking systems. That's fine. What I recommend is that you sort of do that initial intro, like basically with one line. Hey, I'm Jason from Montreal. I'm working on an awesome Ninjas and Dragons game in outer space. Here's a screenshot. I'd love to meet you at Ludicious. Like super condensed, and include one asset. That asset could be a screenshot. It could be a one-pager. It could be a link to a video. But you are not including like your art Bible. You're not including your GDD. You're not including your budget. Like, you're not overwhelming them. You're just literally making this kind of one line and sort of giving them one taste via a screenshot or a one-pager. I'll go into what's a one-pager in a moment, but if you are using the matchmaking systems, one tip is that in the message that you send, include a URL to that asset, the one-pager, the art, the video, so that right away when the publisher gets that alert and says, Jason's requesting a meeting, and there's the text, I can click on that link right away to see what's this game about. And that has a huge impact on the kind of success rate of scoring meetings. Because oftentimes they'll just be like, hey, I want to meet. And then I have to make the effort of like clicking through 5 times to your profile, to your studio. And then you haven't filled out your profile. Then I have to copy paste that into LinkedIn. And then not a lot of publishers have time. They'll forget it. And then you sort of messed up that opportunity. So include an asset or a link to an asset directly in the text of the meeting request. And then if they respond and say, sure, like, hey, let's go, then you say, well, and here's the teaser, and here you can sort of include some of the other bits at that point. And they'll likely agree to a call. They'll likely accept that meeting. In some cases, they will request additional info, right? So for example, Devolver will almost always ask for the demo before they have a call with you. It's okay, great, sounds interesting. Send me the demo, we'll take a look, and if we like it, then we'll do a call. And others will ask for a pitch deck, others will ask for, but in most cases with the one-pager teaser, they'll say, okay, sure, let's have a meeting, let's have a call. And I encourage you to keep all the email exchanges simple and focus on logistics. Meaning the point of the email is to get on a call, right? You're not pitching in depth in the email. So you don't need to include all the stuff unless they've asked for something, fine, then you send what they've asked for. But otherwise the exchanges should be one line. Okay, this time's good, this day's good. All right, let's use Zoom, and make it very, very tight. And then once you get on the call, well, then you razzle dazzle them. Yeah, and here's just the note that assets could be an awesome screenshot, a video link, a one pager. And we'll go over a one pager in a moment, as I said. All right, so the pitch materials. Be mindful that there's more than just the pitch deck. There's this category of pitch materials that I call the meta, and it's your social media channels, it's your website, it's your LinkedIn profile. One of the things that I'll do almost always is, if I get a meeting request from Oliver, I'll plug his name into LinkedIn and say, who's this Oliver guy? Where has he been? What's his profile? And I'll go onto the LinkedIn. And now, if Oliver has a photo of his dog as his profile pic and a bunch of then it's a red flag that it's, okay, this guy's not serious, or it's he's not up to date or whatever. And then also, I mean, this is maybe mattered in the real world. Oftentimes, if I'm at GDC or Gamescom and we've never met before, I'll go back to your LinkedIn profile to say, okay, what does Oliver look like? Who am I looking for? And then if it's that photo of your dog, well, then I'm like, I might miss you. So it's important to think about all the sort of stuff around you, because it may be looked at as folks kind of consider whether they take a meeting or not. The main materials is the one pager. It's all the visual assets, videos, as we mentioned before, super important, screenshots, concept art, etc. The pitch deck itself. And you really have to have a demo build of the game that's stable, that you can hand over or like send via Dropbox or send a Steam key for, because a lot of those meetings will just completely stall if you don't have a build for them to play. So just be mindful in terms of your timing about that. And then, obviously load all this to the cloud. You can use Vimeo for private video if it's not ready to go on YouTube yet. Like, don't send a 40 meg attachment to email and stuff. Kind of have it all sitting up in the cloud. And then same thing with the trailers we mentioned before. Let them see them ahead of the call. All right, one pager design, obviously kind of, one page. I mean, although you would never actually print this, just that's sort of like just the visual sort of benchmark is like it's a one page PDF. It has to be visually sharp, more sort of like designed like a poster or like a movie poster type thing, really well designed. And these are some of the key elements that you want to include in there, which is sort of not unlike a very quick condensed version of what goes into the pitch deck. As an example, this is what the Bloodroots one pager looked like. So it's not a wall of text. It's not an academic essay. It's visually compelling. It includes some of the nice art that we saw in the pitch deck. It has that sort of nugget at the top in terms of price point and platforms and genres, etc. They have their little sort of thematic inspiration. They have their USPs, or here they call it key features, with a little bit of text of what's going on. They have some status info. They have their competitive landscape, contact info, etc. So in my view, this is a really nice one pager. And with this, you are able to secure meetings pretty easily. So you would include a screenshot, you would include this one pager, and now a publisher can look at this and very quickly say, okay, yeah, all right, this is interesting. I want to, let's have that meeting. It could also lead to a fast no, where let's say someone says, oh, well, geez, I'm only doing mobile now, and I can see that mobile is not one of your platforms. Sorry, paper called, but this is not going to fit. I'm only doing mobile, and I can see from your pager you're not mobile, so no meeting. And that's totally fine, because you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time. So yeah, the one pager is a very handy instrument to kind of send it around quick. And if you have one, when you're doing your meet to match meeting requests, you'd want to link to this sitting somewhere up on your website or in a Google Drive or whatever. All right, just a couple more things here. Initial meeting or call flow. Typically, these publisher meetings are 30 minutes. Sometimes they go longer, sometimes they're shorter, but 30 minutes is what you should prepare for. My breakdown, I recommend 5 minutes is kind of small talk, kind of COVID chit chat, like how's it over there? How's it been? How's, whatever. So just sort of small talk. Another 5 minutes, ask the publisher, hey, how's it been? What's your latest release been like? Or even do your homework and say, hey, great job with that Fall Guys release. Oh my goodness, wasn't that unexpected? And how did that go? Just get them talking. It helps build a rapport. but also they may give you some clues in terms of what matters to them, or what's important, or what stresses they may be dealing with. So you can kind of adjust as you go through the meeting. Then, after you've kind of broken the ice, you've had some small talk, you've banter, whatever, then you're like, okay, great, let me run you through my pitch. And then you launch the pitch deck, and bang, you 5 minutes, you rip through those 10 slides, bing, 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 to the point, very succinct, well practiced, and you get that through in 5 minutes. And that leaves you plenty of time, 15 minutes, for Q&A, discussion, next steps, etc. And one of the problems I see from many developers is they don't do any of this, right? The meeting starts, they launch into the pitch, they're nervous, they're excited, they talk for 30 minutes about their game design, and then the publisher's like, oh, well, I got to go to my next thing. All right, thanks. And you've taken no questions, and you've had no discussion. You have no clue what next steps are, etc. And so the goal of the meeting, well, first thing is to just kind of get past what I call the shit filter, right? Many of those first meetings are just to make that initial assessment on compatibility, timing, funding, size, the roles, expectations, this kind of stuff. But you're also doing that yourself, right? Did you get a good vibe? Do you think they can do the things that you expect them to? Are they writing checks in the right size that you need funding at, et cetera? So you're both kind of assessing compatibility. And critically, you need to set up the next meeting, or rather have very clear next steps, right? So you should not leave the first meeting without knowing exactly what the next step is. Is that sending them the bill? Is that build? Is that sending them the pitch deck? Is that having a follow-up meeting with a teammate? It depends. It depends for each case. But you should literally say, all right, thank you for the meeting, Devolver. What is the next step in your approval process? And they'll say, well, send me this and do that. We'll have a follow-up and whatever. And then you make sure you do exactly that. So very clear follow-up and action items. And then the other thing you should be doing is also collecting what I call market intelligence, right? So if you go to Nordic and you have 20 publisher meetings, you should be paying attention to what kinds of questions they're asking, right? So for example, I think this summer, a lot of developers got asked about Twitch. What are your plans for Twitch integration? Are you using the Twitch extension API? Whereas last year, almost no publisher was asking that question. So if you hadn't thought about Twitch integration or Twitch extensions, but like 19 of the 20 publishers you met with all asked that question, like that's kind of important market intelligence to take note of and to think about, say, well, geez, I guess we should think about that. Or why are they asking that question? What's going on? And so, like taking note of these kinds of things are actually really, really important. All right, and I think this is the last one. In terms of follow-up, I always recommend that you do debrief, right? So you sit down with a team, you kind of debrief, how did each meeting go? You update your tracking sheet, right? So we had a call with Devolver, it was on this date, it was with so-and-so, we covered these things, these are the next steps. You kind of fill out your spreadsheet. And just as a side note, I always recommend that you're two team members in a meeting or on a call. And then one of you is the talker and one of you is the listener, right? One of you is trying to be charming and do the pitch and sort of deliver the awesomeness. And then the other one is just sitting back, taking notes, observing reaction, marking down any of those interesting questions and the follow-up items. And when they say what their check size number is, you're making a note of it. Because after you have 5 meetings, 10 meetings, 15 meetings, it's all going to be a blur in your head. Saying, well, was Devolver 500 or 1 million? Was it Curve that did this, or China, or was that team set? Like it's all going to be a blur. And so you want someone who's taking notes, and then you can fill out the spreadsheet. And it's really hard to do those things at the same time. Like it's really hard to be charming and sort of deliver a good pitch while also being super attentive and observant and listening and taking notes. So I always recommend two people. Do your pitch post-mortem, what went right, what went wrong. That's, I guess, part of the debrief. And do your follow-ups, right? So do all, whatever they said, send me this, send me that, do all that. And then as a little tip, I always suggest if they are not already connected to you on LinkedIn, kind of right after the meeting, add them on LinkedIn while they know, like, oh yeah, I just met with Oliver, so I'll accept that. And that way you're kind of building your Rolodex on LinkedIn. And then you can also see, well, Oliver left Devolver and now he's at Xbox. Oh, great. Now I have a friend at Xbox. And so that kind of allows you to kind of keep tabs on folks. So I add everyone on LinkedIn. Whereas if you do it 2 years later, they may not remember you and so on and so on. And in terms of nagging, this always comes up. I would say maximum 2 nags. So you do 1 nag after the call or after the follow-up, maybe a week or 2 later, saying, hey, did you get the materials? I'd like to have our follow-up call. Let me know what you think. If they don't respond still, then maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, you do another nag. Hey, hope you had a great weekend. Let me know if you want to reconnect, blah, 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 whatever. And then if they don't respond after the 2 nags, then you just drop it. You leave them because then you're just being annoying. And from that point forward, you should only ever ping them if you have something meaningful to alert them about. Right. So if let's say 2 months later, you released your trailer and it got 5 million views. Okay, well, now that's something to say, hey, Devolver, just great news on our project. Our new teaser trailer just got viewed 5 million times. We're so happy. Let me know if you want to catch up. And so you're trying to re-spark their interest only based on something exciting that happened, or you were selected to be part of some showcase, or you won a prize, or whatever the case may be. It has to be something notable, and you can kind of use that to kind of re-shock the system. And listen, sometimes the guy got hit by a bus and he's in the hospital. Like sometimes the family's like real life stuff gets in the way, and it's not necessarily because they don't want to work with you. It's just life happens. So that's my recommended process for nagging. All right, so don't forget that you probably suck at pitching. You need to prepare, you need to practice, and you need to always be pitching. And then just finally remember that much like game design itself, pitching is a deep exercise in empathy, and you really do need to understand who are you pitching to, what matters to them, and is what you're doing actually an opportunity to them. If you've done that homework and alignment, then your chances of success are much higher than just sort of the spray and pray model. And hopefully with that, all the money and funding and support will come raining down upon you. All right, so that's it in terms of the lecture. There's a lot of ground to cover. Let me stop the slide share. And then, I saw there was a whole bunch of, questions, comments that came through, but I wasn't looking at any of them. So
thank you very much, Jason. I went through great presentation. I need to update my LinkedIn profile pic, I guess.
Is it literally a dog?
No dog, but no picture. Okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, so let's go through the questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I will try to read them and to sort them out a little bit. So maybe we could go back, or there was a question about your slide number 8. The question was from Nicola, and he was like, if you're fresh out of college and trying to get off the ground, what would you put on slide 8 aside from just the team?
So slide 8 is so slide 8 is the team, right? So first of all, you have to have a team, right? So if it's you're the programmer and your other college graduate buddy is the artist and you have a designer, so there's 3 of you, well, that's the team. Let's say if you graduated from, one of a game degree program or something, you can put that. And Switzerland has some notable schools that are well respected. So showing that you're a graduate of that program, I think is sort of a part of your pedigree. And anything else, really, if you participated in a global game jam and you won, or anything, is fine. But listen, at the end of the day, if none of that exists and it's just the 3 of you and you're hard workers and you're smart, and so the team is your 3 smiling faces and artist, programmer, designer, then that's the team, and that's what you got to go out there in the world with. If you can grab at other things like a game jam prize, or that you were graduates of a particular program, and that kind of adds to it, then great.
Okay. So, and maybe another question: if you started working on your first game and you may be the only one working on the game, should you put this? Should you add this to the slide, or should you then skip maybe the team slide?
Well, it's unavoidable. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It sort of begs the question: are you ready to pitch publishers if it's just you? And is what you're building of sufficient scale to get a publisher excited? So again, that comes back to the empathy and, you know, is what I'm doing actually an opportunity for these, you know, publishers? I mean, if it's only you now, but you anticipate hiring 5 more people, you know, that you can kind of include that on the slide. So you'd say like, okay, here's me and here's my background. And then my hiring plan is 2 more programmers, an animator, and a, you know, whatever, a designer, so that they can kind of see, all right, well, this is you know, you're early, and here's what the team will look like, you know, if we come on board. So yeah, I mean, at that point, the sort of nature of the slide changes a bit. It's more like, here's the plan as opposed to here's the current team.
Okay. And then there's another question from Elias. I'll try to, speaking of pitch deck, what would you add to it compared to the performance pitch? Maybe you can add some info, Elias, if it's not clear.
Yeah, Elias, sorry, performance pitch relative to what kind of pitch?
No, I mean the pitch deck you send after the call. What are the like important info that you add on top of what you already said on the
yeah, so yeah, great question. The quick answer is, structurally, it is the exact same pitch deck, just with a crap ton more text. So basically, all the words that would have come out of your mouth are now letters on the page. I mean, maybe trimmed, maybe condensed a little bit, but essentially the content, the flow, everything can be the same. It's just now you're writing out, you know, here's what this feature means, here's what that, like, you're just sort of adding the details so someone can kind of read it, and more or less in reading it is getting the same experience as if they were listening to you deliver it. And that so you're just putting the words on the page is kind of like the easy way to do it. Obviously, you still have to do that and make it look nice and not just look like a 10-page academic essay and whatever. But that's sort of the short version. Is that's the deck. Just sort of fill out your words on the page.
Yeah. Okay. Then another question from Paul. Does the pitch have to be a slideshow, or can it be something more interactive, dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but it's always risky. Right, like what's good about using PowerPoint or a PDF or whatever is it's stable and it works well, and you don't need plugins, or you know, there's no issue in terms of a lag on Zoom, and it's, you know, easy to email around. Whereas if I've done some wicked Flash animate, like who knows what, I mean, okay, that could be impressive. But you know, maybe it doesn't play through Zoom, or maybe your laptop crashed and only your old laptop had the right version of Flash that still works, and now it doesn't work on anybody else's machine because Flash is no longer. I mean, I'm just making it up, but you're introducing risk by not using just PowerPoint and PDF, and funny enough, it could backfire. Because if you're trying to do something kind of cutesy, dynamic, and the publisher's like, listen, Oliver, I've got 30 meetings today. Just show me show me the info I need to know. I don't need to watch a whole circus act because I'm stressed by the other 20 meetings I just did and the 20 more meetings so sometimes they really want to be to the point, and that kind of can kind of jeopardize. But in the same token, you may walk in and start doing backflips and fireworks, and they're like, oh my God, this is the freshest thing I've ever seen. And then you're the one they remember because of it. So it's, I mean, it's a high risk, high reward. So you can gamble, but yeah, it's just risky.
I mean, you can talk about the Swiss Game Showcase, talking about this pitch.
One sec, Oliver. Paul, you wanted to follow up on that?
Yeah, I meant for this presentation, this pitch, we have 3 minutes. with a video? And should we do something more a slideshow or something more dynamic? Because that's not the same with publishers.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, I mean, you only have 3 minutes, so which means you have to be quite condensed. I mean, you can like skip the last slide, you know, like you can probably cut a few corners, but like ultimately a big part of what the jury members are trying to assess is, do we believe we can take your game and put it in front of the publishers that we know? And so we are sort of thinking ahead to like, is this going to be a good pitch to them? And so I would encourage you, I mean, not necessarily like to the T, but more or less kind of covering similar content. So that helps us as the jury members to already see, oh yeah, this is totally pitchable to Devolver and so on and so on. You know, that's just my recommendation. I don't know, Oliver, if you have a different suggestion in terms of
actually, that's what I wanted to ask as well. So, because you as a mentor, you go through all these pitches, these video pitches. So my question was also like to ask, like, what are you looking for, kind of? But yeah, that was correct.
Well, and I mean, and to Paul's point, I mean, so, you know, part of the expectation of this showcase is to select we want to select great teams that are working on awesome games that are beautiful and fun, but also we think have a commercial potential and have a chance to score a publisher. And so, you know, this is the kind of material you need to score a publisher, but then in your 3 minutes, you only show the beautiful art, and then we have no basis to know what's the business model, who's the competition, like timeline, like then it's hard for a jury member to assess what's the commercial potential for a publisher. So part of the criteria is all of this kind of stuff. And so you would be wise to, you know, showcase who you are, what the game is, but also, you know, what kind of funding you're after and what the potential is, basically all the stuff that we covered in the recipe. But obviously 3 minutes, you'll really have to pack it in.
Is it also interesting for you to, if talking about video pitches for the mentorship program, is it also interesting for you to see why the game studios are applying, like talking about the reasons why they want to take part in?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the video, you can probably skip that because that will take a lot of time to say, I need help with it. And I think, you know, we will pretty much assume that almost everyone applying needs help with their pitch, with their plan, with the marketing, with the fund. Like I don't think there's something so special there that will make us pick one over another. It's you know, it's really, you know, is this game something special? You know, can we get a sense of what the market opportunity is and who the competition is, like what that sales potential looks like? And then sort of info on the team and ability to execute and what that plan is and timeline and stuff like that. So I think that those are kind of the high level things, because again, that's kind of what the publishers will be assessing. So we're like the pre-assessor for the assessing. So I'd focus the video on those elements.
Okay. So before we go maybe to more general questions, are there any do's or don'ts you want to add, talking about the pitch for the Swiss Game Showcase?
Yeah, I mean, well, maybe as a sort of a general tip, in all the pitches you do need a certain level of confidence, and it's important to kind of say things with certainty. Right, so a red flag is, oh, we're thinking of using Twitch and maybe we'll explore this feature and perhaps down the road we'll implement, like to me that's too wishy-washy. Whereas what we want to hear is, you know, we are running on Spatial OS, we are going to implement Twitch extension, you know, we're going to do this and this, and even if sort of it's like the duck, right? The duck that looks calm above the water, but underneath its legs are going crazy. So even if under the surface, the team is still wrestling and debating and deciding and whatever, like for the pitch, you just tell me what the plan is as of right now and you present it as if it's in concrete 100%. and you present it with confidence. I don't want to hear maybe and thinking and exploring and looking at like it's like a lot of pitches tend to be so kind of hesitant, and that's definitely a red flag. And we all know that things will change and evolve and, you know, whatever, that's fine. But when you get up to pitch, you know, like this is what we're doing, and be confident in that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So maybe more a general question from Johannes. Hey, Jason, thanks for your lecture. How do you see the gamification of politics and the potential of new digital currencies coming from the gaming scene and getting adoption in other markets?
Well, that's sort of off topic. Yeah, I mean, the whole blockchain crypto stuff, I mean, I've really not gotten into it too much. I think there's still, you know, too much of a whiff of snake oil and sort of, I don't know, there's so many bad stories still going on that I think before we see massive widespread adoption, I think it's going to be challenging. I mean, game industry, of course, is known as being early adopters. So I think to a certain extent, we'll see it. I mean, there's Blanco's block parties just being released now on PlayStation. And that's sort of, you know, has blockchain, you know, at its core. So, I mean, I'm watching that. There's a few other, I mean, blockchain is super interesting technology. I just think it's sort of wrapped up with crypto and stuff, which makes it, there's so much, again, sort of fraud and uncertainty. So I would not claim that that's my area of expertise or that I've given it much deep thought. So I don't really have a meaningful response there.
Okay, thank you. So please feel free to put some more questions for Jason in the chat. I will try now. Let's go to the Prolovitio side, because there are some other questions about the whole funding thing before we get back to you, Jason, if that's okay.
Yep.
Good. So one question from Nicola was, is the Prolovitio Interactive Media Grant also happening in 2021? Does the showcase conflict with applying for that, or can you apply and potentially get both?
Hey, sorry, Oliver. Yeah. I actually have to run to another call. So if my questions are done, I'm actually going to bail and let you
go. Thank you very much, Jason.
All right. Sorry, folks. Enjoy, and I'm excited to see all your games.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I will try to answer this question. Actually, Prolovitio, actually, there are 3 funding schemes talking about Prolovitio. So on the one side, there's the matching grant, where you get money for your production. Then you have all the international platforms where you can apply for. And then there is the Swiss Game Showcase, the mentorship program. And all these, let's say, the 3 pillars, they don't conflict with each other. So you can easily apply for everything at the same time. There's no, actually, if you apply for one, it doesn't mean like you can't apply for the other funding scheme. So that's fine. It's open for everybody. And talking about the call for projects, the matching grant, yes, there will be a call for projects next year, 2021. It's on the 1st of September, 2021. Yes, that's maybe another answer for you. Let's see. We will add the link of the whole lectures to the call on the swissgames.ch page. So please go there, or if you have the chance to see all your contacts or all your mails, we will also share the slides and the recording with you, I guess. Okay, what else? There was another question. Is it possible to ask to remove the 7 years rule? For example, our studio was founded in 2007, but only in the last years we started using it in a pro way, but we can't access to the call for project, and we find it very frustrating. Yes, that's actually a problem. That's actually just one of the conditions we can't change. So it's really important that even your studio shouldn't be older than 7 years from the, let's say, like the date of founding, and then yes, that's the one thing. And the other thing, actually, Gabriela, can you help me, please? because you were talking about. So your studio shouldn't be older than 7 years, right? And what's the second point?
What do you mean? Like the 7 years after graduation?
Or 7 years after the graduation. So that's the second condition actually. So actually we can't change this. I'm very sorry, because there's actually a condition from the government who really not allows us to really fund projects who are older or not in the starting phase, let's say. Yes. And then there's another question from Attila. Do you support new application submissions from teams that won the grant last year? Is there a possibility to apply for the light track, which includes the visibility, events, component, etc., without the mentoring? Okay. I don't know, Attila, if I'm right, but you're talking about the mentorship program, right? If you've been selected for the first edition, it's actually not allowed to apply with the same project for the second edition of the mentorship program. Please let me know, Attila, if this is not the answer or not.
Yeah, that's perfect as answer. Thank you.
Good. So what else? Please let me know if you have any other questions. I think so. Okay, that's it. Are there any other questions from your side? Good, perfect. So thank you very much for this wonderful first pre-lectures. I hope we will get a lot of applications from your side, and yeah, talk to you soon. And let us know if you have any questions. Go get back to swissgames.ch for more information. My colleague Gabriela is willing to help you anytime with everything you need. And yeah, let's talk soon. We're really excited about hearing about your projects.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.